Hey YouTube, today I'm going to be discussing the processes that I put this classic vintage Epiphone Riviera. Now it's an unusual cat. This is a made in Japan, very early made in Japan. And I'm going to do a follow-up on this. Is this truly a Riviera? Because there's reasons to say no, but it does actually say Riviera on the stamp in the inside pocket there. So it is actually branded as a Riviera, but it is weird. It is different for multiple reasons. One of which is that it is a full hollow. Another is that it is a bolt-on. And what this represents is a transition period when when Gibson decided to differentiate Epiphone as a line by taking it overseas and making it basically the import branch of their overall brand. And of all the different places that they could have gone, they went to Matsumoku. This is a guitar manufacturer based out of Japan. And I'll do another follow-up on them too. I've been learning a lot about them. Very interesting stuff. They actually started out they got a contract from Singer to make sewing machines and cabinets and that sort of thing. And so they ended up becoming partially owned by Singer, and very neat stuff. They ended up going into guitars to diversify and so forth. But very cool. And this is a weird one, again, being a hollow body. And when I got it, you can check out my initial video on it. I've already got 2 videos on it. One for unboxing, when I was just looking at it and seeing what I had. And then the first, as I was getting into it and starting to do my various things, this kind of stage 1 restoration. So this is stage 2. This is the full restored final product. Now there are some steps, as I'll discuss, that I still want to take to make this even better. But I'm going to walk you through all the various things that I did to take this, which literally started as a box full of parts. This had been taken apart, and as I'll explain, it had some pretty significant damage to it around the neck pocket on the body. And so I will walk you through what I did to correct that, and also what I'm going to continue to do stepping forward as I continue to make this an even better and better guitar. But I am super pleased with it, and it is just such a fantastic instrument. I feel very blessed to have it. So stay tuned with me as I walk you through my restoration on this early 1970s Epiphone made in Japan by Matsumoku Riviera. So let's kind of start at the top and work down. It did not need a lot of work up top. The head was in pretty much perfect condition, and the tuners in great shape. In fact, they're very nice tuners. And one of the things, there's some people that just absolutely hate this breed of guitar and everything that it represents and so forth. But I will say that I've got other Matsumoku made guitars, and Epiphone, when they negotiated the contract for this, when Gibson decided to use them to make their first overseas guitars, there's some reasons that they went to them. And, yes, to cut costs, but also that they were making excellent instruments, and they were taking a cleave into their market share. And so, they didn't just want another, stuck-on name brand, which I've got. I've got a Bruno Conqueror, a Fran from Japan. Check out my series on that. Love it. Love that guitar. And that's what led me to the Matsumoku made guitars and learning about the factory and everything. Really cool stuff. So, there's reasons that they chose them, and there's also, ways that they differentiated their models, that they weren't just rebranded. They just pop a headstock brand on there. And so it is deeper than just, oh, they had this model and whatever. They converted an existing model, which I think its roots go back to the Fran from Japan series, when they did those early ES style, whatever you want to call them, the hollow body. And they were true hollow body, as is this, which differentiates them, because otherwise, generally speaking, Rivieras are semi-hollow. And this is a hollow body. So that's one of the reasons why you might say, well, that's not really Riviera. And in some regards, it's not. It is its own thing. But it does actually say Riviera on the inside. So, it didn't take much other than just some cleanup and that sort of thing. Now, the neck, and you can see I discussed this in the previous episode, the neck, while being in very good shape, there was some separation on the fretboard, and some very light but consistent chipping going down. You can barely see it now. If you look up close in person, you can see it easier, but there's a little bit of chipping, and I basically just glued that back down using my Starbond thin fast set and clamped it down. Very easy to do, and then just cleaned it up, buffed it up. And so now all of that's good. Now I believe that that represents what had happened in terms of it. The separation up here was from, this guitar must have been dropped. So the fret separation speaks to the deeper damage, which was around the neck pocket, and I believe this guitar was dropped rather significantly. Some pretty major droppage, and I base that off of having excavated around the neck here. Now the previous owner, the guy that, I presume this is from the guy that sent it to me, he said he had it 30 years, and one of the pictures was before he had taken it apart on his wall in the listing, so I believe the damage was relatively fresh. And I'm still cleaning this up where he had used some sort of wood glue, rather heavy wood glue, and tried to fill that in. But here's the problem. So this is a hollow body, and I think that actually saved it, but also this explains why it did what it did. And that is that basically the damage was that all of this, it hit so hard that it wanted to separate and actually buckle in a little bit. And so there was a buckling that's happened, and so it's not perfectly level right around here. And it was worse before. And what I did was, as I got all of this apart and everything, and I still had the neck off, I broke this loose again. Now, very carefully. It took me a while as I was sanding this down, and I was working in some, very small blades basically in there to cut loose the glue that had been used to reset this. And it took some excavating. This side wasn't as bad, but this side was pretty significant. So I got all of that loose, and through very creative use of my set of clamps, I've got a bunch of these DeWalt soft clamps that are just perfect for this sort of thing, resetting wood damage and so forth. And so I got everything clamped back together as I was working on rebuilding this little piece right here at the base of the neck. And so through the use of clamps and getting it positioned and twisting it this way and that way, and then applying that star bond once everything was in place, and getting that to set really good all around the neck pocket and so forth. I use it to, it soaks into wood, and so any bare wood, when you're doing a project like this, any bare wood, you can use a little bit of that star bond, not a lot, just a little bit, and it'll soak right into the grain of the wood and strengthen it and harden it and make it less prone to humidity issues and that sort of thing. So I use that extensively throughout here, and then I had to do some sanding, and I got in there with my small my small sander bit on my snake Dremel there, and so I had to machine some things and work it in and get it all back in there. And when I got it all back together, the action was very, very high. I think that's partially from just the way that the guitar settled after the hit, after the neck was hit so hard. And part of it also might be the design and just aging and so forth. And so through use of shims, I've got it lowered. Now it's still a little bit high. It's a little closer to an acoustic than I would want for like a blues, fast playing, low action sort of a guitar. So it works really well as a kind of a semi-acoustic, and being hollow body, you actually get better resonance out of it. So this is unplugged and everything. This is just what I'm getting as an acoustic sound. You actually get a decent amount of acoustic, way more than you would from a semi-hollow with that center block down there preventing the sound from emanating. And so I might shim it some more down the road. I'm just going to leave it like it is and just let it settle for a good long while and play it like it is before I try doing any more shimming. You have to remember when you're working on guitars that with rare exception, it's mostly wood that you're working with, whether it's straight pieces of wood or laminate, ply, tops and so forth. It's wood, and wood expands and contracts. It's natural substance. And there are things you can do to preserve it. There's things you can do to prevent it from doing all that. But it's an organic substance, and so you have to treat it as such. And just realize that it settles, it changes, it moves, and so forth in very small increments. But that changes aspects about the guitar. So right now it's fully playable like it is, but I might try to lower the action, do some more shimming back there down the line. So one thing I did not do that I was planning on doing is potting these pickups. And I had mentioned, with previous experience with full hollow body, potting helps a lot to make them less microphonic. They're less, prone to issues of distortion and so forth, and just generally speaking, less noise, especially if you include conductive tape in there as part of it. And so I was planning on potting them. One of the viewers commented and said, "I've got that same guitar. Please don't pot them. They're great. The pickups are just great. Just try them out before you do anything." So, okay, sure. I was just going to pot them because it seemed like the easy thing to do in terms of planning ahead, not having to take everything back off again. While I had it off, I was going to go ahead and pot them. But I took their advice, and now what I did do, though, in addition to reinforcing all of this, and this is looking down the road, what I plan to do more of. The next time I take the strings off and do some work on this, I'm going to do more reinforcing of the neck pocket. Because the issue being that you've only got just a tiny little bit of wood, and there's a block back there under the pickup against it to give it some extra support, but it is not nearly as strong as having a full semi-hollow center block. Now, on the one hand, that makes it more prone to, it got hit and it had damage, but it also gave rather than breaking. So the headstock didn't break off, the neck didn't break. However it fell, it didn't break, it just bent. And it bent in just these few ways that it took some just, work and feeling and clamping and pulling and giving, just to reshape it as best as I could to its original shape. It's not perfect, but it's you wouldn't look at it now and say that went through catastrophic damage. I mean, I still have to, again, work off some more of the wood glue back here from that previous repair attempt, but this does not look like a heavily damaged guitar now. And it's not, it's good and repaired. It's now, another thing with that is because of it doesn't have a huge amount of support in there, it's more prone to doing bends by, now you might like this, because if you like this sort of bend by pushing, one with your forearm and then pushing against it to do do some slight vibrato bends on the neck itself. This is more prone to that. Maybe that's your thing, and so that might actually intrigue you. But I'm going to do some more reinforcing in there just to give it a little more stability. The tuning is good. Now that it's good and settled in, it's had some time to really acclimate, especially to the reshaping of the body that I did and all of the reworking and cracking it apart and putting it back together and splicing this in. And I also, you can't really see it now because the pick guard's on there. Where this goes in right here, that piece had broken off, and so there was a chunk of laminate about like that. I use this thin, it's basswood, I believe it's 3-ply, yeah, 3-ply, very nice sanded sheets, and they're very inexpensive, and they're great. If you're into restoring guitars, working on guitars, just get a pack of these. You never know when you can just throw some reinforcement in. Very easy to do, especially with Star Bond. And I used the same thing. I reinforced all throughout here. And so this now has extra ply under it that I glued and clamped to it. So it's got an extra sheet of ply. It's still allowing the sound to move around. I did the same thing to Fran from Japan. And it still allows the full hollow body, semi-acoustic sound. But it's just a little bit tougher right there. And so, just long term, that should help to reinforce it. In terms of inside the guitar, the other thing that I did was I used that StewMac Conductive paint, that black conductive paint, and I painted very carefully over time, just using a variety of paint brushes. I painted as much as I could possibly get to of the inside behind here, and I reached and I got in every nook and cranny and hole, and I painted it. It's probably about 75% covered, and visually it's 100% covered. You really struggle to find a spot in there that's not nice and black now. So not only does that level it up a little bit, it also provides a nice conductive barrier there. So now there's very little sound. In terms, I don't know what it had before because it came to me as a box of bones basically, but it's totally quiet. totally quiet, and I'm not hearing any hum or anything. It's totally quiet. So that really helped it a lot. And it's very easy to do. That stuff is very thin. It's water based, and so you can really work it all into the nooks and crannies. I put multiple layers under each of the pickups, and so not having any issues with sound, hum, or anything like that. So that was really good. Very easy to do. Just took time. It's, again, being careful. And I noticed that generally speaking, if you get any of it on a finished spot, it wipes off relatively easy as long as you get it pretty quick. Now, if you let it harden on, it will actually dry even onto like urethane stuff. Now you can still get it off with your thumbnail, but but on wood especially, it soaks right into it. And so not only is that going to be a conductive barrier, it's also a moisture barrier. So this will be less prone to humidity issues in the long run and so forth. So that's another way that, I like to restore of the philosophy better than new as best I can. Right now, there's some things like this is never going to be 100% factory like new. This is sustained damage that there is no coming back from completely, but I can work with it and I can make it, playable as good as new, if not better. And so, something like the conductive shielding in there, that's just not something that was, standard procedure back then. And now, you can get these, even though it's expensive for one of those cans, it'll last you a really long time. And so I've got that on there, and reinforced again all throughout the body as best I could get up under here. Now there is, of course, it doesn't have a full center block, but there is a block running under where the bridge is. So that way, it's not pressing down onto pure laminate. There is a column block right there, but it's not a full center block running down the entirety of it. Now, in terms of the electronics, like I said, the pickups, all I did was just lightly clean them out in the back. I didn't pot them or do anything to them. I left all the wiring as it was. The two exceptions to that is and this cannot be stock. It's an on-off-on three-way toggle. So the way it came wired, you could either have one or the other, but you couldn't have both. It would be like a kill switch putting in the middle. So I don't know what the deal with that was, but I got a regular old three-way, standard Gibson style three-way switch in there now, and it's working good. I left all of the wiring on the controls. Everything worked good, minimal scratchiness and that sort of thing. So all of that's working really good. The other thing I did replace was the jack, and I use these Pure Tone multi-contacts. I get them by the bag, because anytime I have any issue with a jack, I'll inspect it and see if there's something like it just needs to be cleaned. But generally speaking, if it's not just an issue of needing to be cleaned or like tightened a little bit or something like that, I just swap in one of those. So here's the one I took out of it, and also oxidized and so forth, but very minimal, right? And so you really just have that one point of contact on there, and this is typical. Most of your jacks are going to be like that, but once this starts to go, and it's just, this is incredibly old as guitars go, so this is a new one, and this is the kind that I put in there. You can see it's multi-point because it's got two of those pieces, so it actually pinches from both sides, and that makes it way more stable. And you just don't get noise from the cable getting jiggled around and all that kind of stuff. So I just, and they're not paying me, they're not sponsoring me or anything, but this is the only kind of jack that I put in, and it's a little more expensive than the cheapy stuff, but it's way worth it in the long run, and easy to swap. So now I've got a restored classic Epiphone, and I blitzed this thing over the course of a couple days because I was just so into it. I spent a lot of time in my office, but maybe like 15 hours I put into this, but oh, what a cool guitar. And check out, I'm going to come up with a pure tones sample. I'll run through a bunch of different tones and so forth, but I can't leave you hanging without any kind of indication of how this thing sounds. So check this out. This is on my Mustang modeling amp on the baseband setting. No effects, just got the gain cranked a little high to give that bluesy bite. Thanks for hanging with me. Check back in on the channel, got lots of stuff going on. Oh, this thing just gives me the chills, it plays so good. Y'all have a wonderful day.